Hello to all students. I am Professor Masood Fuzail. Today we are going to discuss structure and function of erythrocytes. As you know that erythrocytes are red blood cells. If we split the word erythrocyte, erythro means red, cyte means cell. So these are specialized cells which are present in our blood and which are known as red blood cells. First of all, we are going to discuss some important characteristics of red blood cells. Number one, red blood cells are most numerous formed element. In our blood, there are three different types of elements like platelets, leukocyte, white blood cells, and the third component is red blood cell. So in blood, there are most numerous blood cell which are red blood cell. They are 4 to 6 million in 1 cubic millimeter. The number of red blood cell varies person to person. If a person is fatty, it should have more blood cells because its body need more oxygen. More oxygen mean more blood cells. And if a person is not very fat and is skinny, it should have less amount of red blood cell because he requires less amount of oxygen as compared to fatty person. In the same way, the person who are living at high altitude like hilly areas, like mountains areas, they usually have high amount of red blood cells. That is why their color is usually red, bright red. And because on the high altitude there is a less amount of oxygen available, so to maintain the oxygen level in the body, usually those person have high amount of oxygen in their body, a high amount of red blood cells. So red blood cell number varies person to person. And the second function, the second point is the function of Rbc erythrocyte. The function of erythrocyte is transport of respiratory gases. So as you know that there are two respiratory gases, oxygen and CO2. Oxygen is used for metabolism in our body, while CO2 is produced as a result of metabolism, which is a byproduct and must be removed from the body. So to remove these gases, blood is used, and red blood cell usually carry oxygen with help of a protein known as hemoglobin and transport to different parts of the body in the tissues in the cells. While CO2 is also removed from the body, but it is usually dissolved in the cytosol, and less amount of CO2 is transported by red blood cells. Besides oxygen and CO2, red blood cells in our body also transport a certain amount of ions like bicarbonate ions, H positive ions, and certain amount of other gases too. If we look at the structure of red blood cell, the red blood cells are biconcave disc. So if I look at the red blood cell in a microscope, this is a red blood cell. It is a disc shape and it has usually cave inside. So cave inside means it has concavity inward on both sides. If we look at the sideways of the structure of red blood cell, it shows concavity inside. So that is why we call it biconcave. Biconcave means they are thinner in the center while they are thicker from the edges. So that is why they are biconcave in their structure. The next function is that they have no nucleus and organelles. As you know that when red blood cells are produced, they usually have nucleus, they have organelles like mitochondria, Golgi complex, and other organelles. But after maturation and development, red blood cell erythrocyte loses their nucleus and loses their organelles. Now why is that so? As you know that what is the function of red blood cell? Transport of oxygen. If a cell transports oxygen and most of the oxygen is consumed by the cell itself, then how this cell is going to transport oxygen? So to minimize the expenditure of oxygen by the cell, the nature has removed most of the organelles and nucleus from this cell. So nucleus has been deleted, DNA has been deleted, no nucleus, no DNA, it means no RNA, it means no transcription, no translation, no protein synthesis. Once the protein hemoglobin has been formed, that's it, no more protein synthesis. Mitochondria, Golgi complex, ribosome, etc., everything has been deleted so that the energy cannot be used, oxygen cannot be used by these organelles, no need for that. Then question arises, how then RBC, red blood cell, work without oxygen? So the answer for this question is that the red blood cell usually rely on glycolysis for energy production, because in the glycolysis is a anaerobic process of respiration during which energy is produced, which is enough for their functioning. They do not do oxidative phosphorylation, which usually takes place in the mitochondria. If they had mitochondria, they're going to lose all their oxygen which are they carrying towards the tissue. So that is why red blood cells do not contain any organelles. So if they do not have DNA, no nucleus, no organelles, so they cannot synthesize their proteins and some other stuff. It means they cannot maintain their structure for a longer period of time. So that is why their age is very short. They only survive for 4 months, which is equal to about 100 to 120 days. After that, the red blood cell dies, and then they are transported to liver where they are recycled again. The next point is that they contain hemoglobin. Each red blood cell contain about 200 million number of RBC. So what is hemoglobin? We are going to look at the structure of hemoglobin. First of all, hemoglobin is a protein which is found in the cytosol of RBC. Usually it is thought that hemoglobin is present on the surface of RBC, but this is not the case. Hemoglobin is always present in the cytosol portion of the red blood cell, which is the mostly case. All part of the red blood cell is cytosol. The second point is that hemoglobin molecule, which is a protein, contain 4 chains of globulin protein. As you can see in this diagram, I have taken proteins from the red blood cell. There are 4 chains, 1, 2, 3, 4. I have made them with different colors so that you can easily distinguish them. So this is alpha chain, this is also alpha chain, 2 alpha chain which contain 141 amino acid, and black and green are the beta chains, 2 beta chains, each beta chain contain 146 amino acids. So the total number of amino acids present in all 4 chains is 574, and there are thousands of molecules of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen are present inside each molecule of hemoglobin. So each hemoglobin molecule is made up of 4 proteins which are globular proteins, globin, 2 alpha chains and 2 beta chain. Each molecule of hemoglobin can bind 4 oxygen molecules. Now each strand of amino acid, each chain of amino acid contain a molecule, a group of molecule which is known as coenzyme. It is called Heme. Heme is made up of iron and certain, I'm going to discuss this structure, can bind 1 molecule of oxygen. Now you can do the math. 1 hemoglobin contain 4 heme groups. One is right here, the other is on the back, this one is the third, this is the fourth one. 4 heme molecule, and each heme molecule can bind 1 oxygen atom. Now each red blood cell contain how many hemoglobin molecule? Each RBC contain 200 million molecules of hemoglobin. You can multiply 4 with 280 million, and then 4 to 6 million cells contain how many molecules of hemoglobin. Then you can multiply with 4 again, and you can do the math, rest of the math, that is a huge amount of oxygen molecules which are bound by these hemoglobin molecules, and then they are taken towards the tissues and the cells of the body. Now if we look at the structure of heme, which is a coenzyme, each heme group is made up of like this one. The central atom is iron. Its structure resembles chlorophyll molecule, and the difference between chlorophyll and heme is that Chlorophyll molecule contain magnesium in the center, while heme group contain iron in the center. So as you can see in the red one, this is the iron molecule, iron ion, which is in the center. It is attached by 4 nitrogen atoms on 4 sides. Then each nitrogen is surrounded by a ring which is known as pyrrole ring. This is the first, second, third and fourth. These 4 rings are then are attached with bridges which are made up of carbon and hydrogen. As you can see in the blue color, this is a bridge, this is a bridge, this is a bridge, and in this way a ring is formed. This molecule is known as heme, which is usually composed of carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen and iron. So to synthesize a molecule of hemoglobin, what we need? Proteins and iron. And iron is present in the center. Then carbon and hydrogen are oriented around this central molecule of atom. Then heme is then attached with the chains of amino acids. The next point is that oxygen binds with iron. As I already mentioned that hemoglobin contain heme group, and each heme group can bind oxygen atom. CO2 binds with globins. Usually CO2 is transported with the help of amino acid by attaching the CO2 molecule with amino acid present in these chains, not with the heme group, because heme group is only involved in the transport of oxygen. How does hemoglobin and RBC are formed? This process is known as erythropoiesis. To start erythropoiesis, red blood cell formation, we need a factor which is known as erythropoietin, EPO. Erythropoietin is a hormone which is produced in our kidneys. How does this molecule produce? Due to the stimulus of low amount of oxygen. When low amount of oxygen is present in the body, a stimulus is given to this hormone. This hormone is released into the blood. This hormone reaches to the bones in our body. Which bones? Short bones, which have flat bones, which have red bone marrow, like the sternum in your chest, like the vertebrae in your vertebral column, like the ribs, like the flat bones which contain red bone marrow, where erythropoiesis can start. Erythropoiesis is the formation of red blood cells, which is also known as hematopoiesis. You can also watch my video on hematopoiesis, very good lecture, you can watch for that. And hormone produced in kidney and act on bones. Then bones जो हैं they control erythropoiesis and they form the process of blood formation under the stimulus of low blood oxygen level. Now for the formation and development and maturation of red blood cell hemoglobin, what you need? You need iron. And how you get iron? You can only get iron from your diet. So if you're taking diet with iron, then you have enough amount of iron in your body. If you have enough amount of iron, then you have enough amount of hemoglobin, and then if you have enough amount of hemoglobin, then you have enough amount of RBC, and then you have enough amount of red blood cells in your body. So usually we have such diet which is usually deficient in iron, then we will suffer a loss of heme, and due to the loss of heme we are not going to be able to make hemoglobin, and without hemoglobin we are not going to make red blood cells, and if we do not have red blood cell in our body, then we will be suffered in a disease known as anemia. So anemia is a major problem in the whole world. So how do we get iron? We can get iron from such foods which usually have high amount of folic acid, which includes whole grain cereals, spinach and green leafy vegetables. We can also get iron from liver. We can also get from red meat. Several different sources. We can get iron from egg and some underground nuts and vegetables. So such food which is rich in iron and vitamin B12, which is cobalamin, and also folic acid and amino acid. So all these things are necessary in our diet. So if a person who is eating eggs, 2 eggs a day, and which is essential source of amino acids and protein which can synthesize the alpha and beta chains of hemoglobin, then eats iron, certain amount of iron with help of folic acid, and then they will provide enough amount of iron to synthesize heme, and heme is responsible for synthesizing hemoglobin, and then hemoglobin is required to synthesize red blood cells. So take a balanced diet which can help you to build your RBC. So these iron, vitamin B12, folic acid and amino acid are required for development and maturation of your red blood cell. So take care of your diet and take care of your health. I hope you like this video. Like it, subscribe it, sometimes share it, and we'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.